Hello, and welcome to the Grand Cinema Hotel, a podcast hosted by three friends who love cinema. I'm Gus, and I'm joined with my two co-hosts, Nate and Alvaro. Tonight, you'll be staying in Room 127, Men, the newest film by visionary director Alex Garland. So go ahead, get comfortable, and throw on that Do Not Disturb sign as we dive headfirst into a world of toxic masculinity with Men.
You must wonder why you drove him to it.
Why, I didn't drive him to it.
I thought it'd be true. But if you had given him the chance to apologize, he'd still be alive.
What?
What's going on to all my victims of the patriarchy out there? Thanks for checking back in the Grand Cinema Hotel. As always, if you're listening on YouTube, as Gus always says, click all the buttons, leave a comment, say what's up. If you listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podcast app, Pocket Cast, whatever the hell else is out there, subscribe for notifications so you get notified when we drop a new video. Which takes us into the topic of the week. Are we even allowed to be talking about this film? I don't know. It wasn't made for us, but it is Men, Alex Garland's new feature film, which takes us to Alex Garland himself. I don't think we've ever really brought him up on the podcast before, so you want to dive into how you feel about him as a director?
What's up, guys? Gus here. Alex Garland is probably one of the more intriguing directors working today. It's kind of weird that we haven't brought him up because I feel like we like him a lot. So he's just never really been on the brain while we're recording, you know. But I know we really like Ex Machina and Annihilation. So for us to not have talked about him yet, or even brought him up when we're talking about like favorite directors, it's kind of crazy that it's just like slipped right past us. But yeah, he makes some of my favorite movies. I rewatched Annihilation in preparation for Men, and I think that's just like a really fucking great movie. Like, I think this was my third time seeing it, and for me now, it's probably one of my favorite movies. But what about you, Ro? I know you like Alex Garland a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Garland obviously first watched Ex Machina. I think I watched that in the theater. That's my favorite one from him still, and I think just that sci-fi biased, which he quickly became like, we went to go watch Annihilation because of like how much I liked him in Ex Machina. And so I've been there, I feel like, for the three that he's released recently. And I think that's why I feel like a bias to like how much I like him or everything. And I know he like has written a lot of stuff like now looking in retrospect that I liked. And I know you too, Nate, like you like 28 Days Later, like he wrote that. And so I just think there's something about the type of director, the stuff that he likes to highlight and the themes that he tackles. I like the way that he does them. It kind of actually reminds me of Yorgos a little bit too, which we haven't really brought up as much either, but they're kind of in the same kind of way that they kind of grab a simple premise and then bring it to places that I think only their mind can really spawn.
Yeah, I definitely think that, and that's a good example of Yorgos Lanthimos, but I think Yorgos Lanthimos and Alex Garland are two directors working today who lean into the weirdness of the movie, and I feel like they're also not scared of being pretentious. And they are I feel like they're very heavy-handed filmmakers.
Yeah, they are.
And they lean into the subject matter instead of trying to maybe work around it or have it be an afterthought or maybe just set pieces and stuff like that. Like, they really, really do go into this is going to be fucked up, and I'm probably going to leave you with more questions than answers, and it's on you to really participate and figure out what this movie is meant to be. And I feel that way for all three of them. I don't know which one. I mean, I think I like Annihilation the most of the three. And all three of them have the same kind of ambiguous ending where you walk out with that, like, okay, there should be just a little bit more, because I feel like you just, like, cliffhangered me almost. Like, almost all of his movies feel like a cliffhanger. And I just think that's really interesting that he has really like stuck to his guns about how he wants to make movies.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Garland. I think that I saw Ex Machina not in theaters, and then after
I didn't either.
No, I saw it. I didn't even really know about it. and then saw it and fell in love with that movie. And then I had read Annihilation, and then once I saw that he was doing it, I was like, well, of course I'm going to go see this in theaters. And I think I agree with you guys. I think that's my favorite of his. But yeah, no, he really is just he's very ambitious, I feel like, in the way that he tells stories, not necessarily in like, I mean, because like you said, Ro, a lot of his like subject matter is very like straightforward and like he is a little heavy-handed. But the fact that the way that he really likes to break down his stories, and he's a very show don't tell type of director, which I really enjoy. But no, this movie's a lot of fun.
He also has that TV show he's been doing before this movie, which I'm not sure. Yeah,
I watched some of it last night, right before I fell asleep, just because I wanted to have
Get
an
some more.
idea. Yeah, and well, do you have anything to say about
No,
Devs?
no,
or
I
you
was
just
going to
mentioned
ask if either of you have seen it,
Yeah,
or like
I mean,
checked it out.
It's also, and this is something, this plays a huge role in Alex Garland's work, at least the stuff that he's directed, but Devs is also told through the perspective of a woman. And I mean, Alex Garland sure has a lot to say about women in his movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he treats it in a very like complex, layered manner. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like it's pandering, but this is a deep question for him probably. Like, so what are your feelings on women? Because I mean, he just has a lot to say about them in general.
I want to know
all of his work.
Who hurt him? Like, you know what I mean? Who hurt this man?
Or who changed his life, or I don't know what happened to him. But like like we talked about off pod one time, like Alfred Hitchcock and the idea of like being the wrong person, right? Like being framed.
Yeah.
But like or like Jordan Peele, right? It's kind of like, what incident happened to you that sparked all of these crazy ass ideas
Exactly.
in your head, right? And like with Alex Garland, it's like I think that is also just like a little nugget that is stuck in his mind that is always going to be part of his work. And I think he probably has some of the strongest like female characters in film as of recent.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there's a lot going on with them, and it doesn't feel like pandering either.
No, it doesn't.
In one of his interviews, he was saying that before it was hard for him to kind of get that mass appeal from, I guess you would say like Hollywood or whatever, because people in the beginning were always like, your movies are kind of how you said, they're missing that extra, like, give me the answer. And then he's like, but at this point in my career, people know, like, if you like me, this is what you're getting from me. And he's like, now it's different. Like now people who give me because they're kind of talking about like, did A24 have any creative control or anybody that was, producing this? And he was like, no, nobody ever really tells me what to do anymore. Like A24 signs up and they're 100% supportive of whatever I want to do. And I think at this point, like, that's why I like his movies so much. I know what I'm getting out of it. I know I'm not getting a straight answer, but then I think about them. Like, I haven't stopped thinking about Men since I saw Men and all of the movies we've watched in prep, like trying to figure out like, what did that movie mean to me? And I watched it again and he just kind of confirmed some of the stuff, but I just think it's so all three of us could have a different depiction of what the movie actually means. And I think that's his end game goal, which makes him ambitious, and I like it. And some people obviously think it's one note or flat-footed, but it works for me.
Yeah, I mean, so I watched, like I said, Annihilation last night in preparation for the pod, and I couldn't help but notice now that I have seen Men, like the similarities between these two movies, and specifically the main characters. Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to get into the book a little bit since you have read it. Mm-hmm. That's probably really helpful for us. Natalie Portman's character in Annihilation and Jessie Buckley's character in Men are both characters who are dealing with like guilt and like the result of like living with that guilt, right? And there's these through lines, and even the way that both movies are shot, right? So like we get flashback scenes in both movies, and I just think whatever he was doing when he made Ex Machina is not the same headspace that I think he was in when he wrote Annihilation and Men. Like, I feel like those two are so much more similar than Ex Machina would be.
I would agree.
Yeah, like maybe Ex Machina feels like it was in a different phase of his life. But Men and Annihilation are almost like dealing with the same issues, but in totally different fashions.
Ex Machina seems more paired up with like Dread.
Yeah, or Devs, you know what I mean? Like, so I just feel like, and I know that you've seen that he's been writing this for like 15 years, right? Which I also think is interesting.
Yeah.
Like early woke king.
I know we've been going at it since. Yeah.
His creative process says it's usually like that. A lot of the movies he's written, he started like first drafts of them years ago, and then he's like, but the more that I grow, the more that I mature, the more this stuff happens to me. I go back to these stories. He's like, I have a lot in the draft board or whatever you call it. He's like, and I never throw them away because he's like, there's something in this story that I first wrote that I want to get themes across. And he's like, the more I learn, the more I grow. I'm like, oh, I think this is the best way to execute this. Or the more that I'm experienced, it's different, like other media. He's like, this is the way to finally do this. And I think it's interesting because he was saying like the first draft for men was really, really different from what it is now. But now it just comes from maybe like, after writing Annihilation or reading the book Annihilation, he's like, maybe this is how I should write female characters,
So with the book, Nate, I've heard that it's quite different than the movie. And Alex Garland was a writer before, right? So he worked with Danny Boyle mostly, like doing Sunshine and 28 Days Later and stuff like that. And when he was the writer, he had to live with people changing his stories, right? But then he did that with Annihilation to another author. So for better or worse, how do you think that compared?
Compared to Vanderbeek's book, I think I like the movie more, which is something that I honestly feel like doesn't happen a lot with me. But I think the changes that he made, which a lot of the changes come towards the end of the movie, I actually think that it works really well, especially for cinema and everything. So I like his ending more than Vanderbeek's ending. But
so I think a good comparison would be, I've seen World War Z, but I never read the book, and I heard that it changes a lot as well, and that it's because the book and Annihilation, like as books, they're almost like unfilmable. Like there's just the way that they're written can only be done like in the book format. Like it doesn't translate to movies the same way. Do you feel like that about the Annihilation book?
No, yeah, I would think so, because a lot of it is going on in her head, like her headspace and what's happening, and I feel like it's really hard to portray that in a movie like Annihilation in the way that it's done in the book. So the visual representation of everything, I think, works. Yeah, I think so.
For sure. Do you guys want to start talking about the movie?
Yeah,
a bit?
let's do it.
Do you want to start with the cast, or do you want to start with the? Oh, you know what? We were going to talk about our audience.
Oh yeah,
our audiences, because we all saw this separately, and we all had different experiences. Do you want to go first, Nate?
Yeah, my theater was actually pretty full. I was surprised. I would say it was probably like 70-80% full. There's a lot of people in there.
Nice.
And it seemed like everybody, like, it was very quiet the whole movie. Like there wasn't a whole lot of reactions to things until, I won't give anything away, but the ending, there was probably a group of like maybe 6, 7, 8 people that got up and left and didn't come back throughout the final 20 minutes. So I don't know.
Is that a rare occasion for you to see a walkout?
I mean, I think we see it every now and again, but to see that many people from different groups, like independent, people, like get up and leave, it surprised me. I think it's the most amount of people I've ever seen leave a theater.
I mean, this movie's pretty perverse.
It is. Yeah, and there's no way going into it you could have seen what happened coming. So I don't know. You're kind of at the mercy of the movie at that point, but also like you're signing up for an Alex Garland movie, So I don't know.
Even as an Alex Garland movie, this is pretty out
it's
there.
It's out there. Yeah. I mean, I personally know like his endings are always over the top. So like I was expecting like a big ending, but not that big.
Ex Machina and Annihilation's endings, they're ambiguous and they leave you with like that cliffhanger feeling. But he has not done an ending like this.
Not quite,
yet.
no.
So even for the Alex Garland standard, this is pretty over the top.
No, because I would say even building up like from Ex Machina, like Annihilation's ending, it was a little more crazy, and then this one is just even more. It blew the fucking roof off.
I would
honestly.
say like Ex Machina and Annihilation, it's if you thoroughly dissect the films, there's horror themes in them.
Yeah.
But in this one, he took it there. I feel like he completely was like, let me take it there, which I from the trailer, I slightly expected, but not where it went. It definitely took me to surprise, like how, I guess, bloody it got.
Even Cronenberg was probably like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, but it's pretty nasty,
So
bro.
I also had a theater that was about 70 to 80% full. I had the cinephile experience with the Nicole Kidman trailer in the beginning. I had a round of applause that lasted all the way through the A24
Are you
logo
kidding
popping
me?
up. Yeah, like they clapped for like a minute and a half. And then when the A24 logo popped up on the screen, a couple of dudes literally went, "Yeah, A24." So
let's go
into it. Yeah, let's go for sure. And I had a very reactive audience, like
Yeah.
a whole lot of like, what the fuck? And like one guy at the end literally went, dumb. You know what I mean? So I had a very active audience, which is always great for a horror movie. And I think now with like, now that we've seen X, and then I think when we saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, like I think this year specifically, A24 is having a good year of fans showing up, like the people who know what they're getting into. Because as of this recent string of A24 movies that we've seen, all the audiences feel like they're in on it.
Yeah.
So that has made it a really fun experience.
I think
because
so, too.
Even when we saw Red Rocket in December, we were like 4 or 5 other people in there besides us, right?
Correct.
It's good to see people at the movies.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I don't know why, but maybe people are just excited again. And I mean, A24's had a pretty banger slate this year. So it was just nice to see a full audience enjoying it and, you know, understanding what they're here for.
Yeah, agreed.
When I went on Thursday, there wasn't many people there. I think there was 4 other guys there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and it was only guys, which I thought was interesting. So the first watch, I really felt like I got to almost like a little private watching, you know.
Just you and your 4 other personalities.
Yeah, exactly. But then the second time that I watched it last night to prep again, it was more full, which I thought was cool because I had never really seen more people ramp up from previews on Thursday. Actually, for like for at least for A24 movies, for all the indie ones, usually it seemed like for me everybody showed up early and then nobody showed up for the rest of the weeks that it was showing. But it does seem like some people saw this movie and they brought people to like come watch this movie again because it was more full than I expected. And I did have like 3 people walk out. A couple of people audibly just kind of saying like, you know, at certain parts.
Oh, they're not wrong.
But in both showings, I do feel like people either loved it or hated it, which I think is the consensus people have been landing on in general for the movie.
Yeah.
Isn't that like the consensus on life? You either love everything or hate everything.
And yeah, like this movie, some people either think it's like the dumbest fucking movie of the year, or there are other people really just, I think they were strapped in knowing what Alex Garland gives us and just kind of enjoyed it. And yeah, my audience kind of felt very mixed reaction like that.
I feel like that's how this movie does seem to be pretty polarizing. I don't know if it has to do, you think it has to do with the subject matter, or you think it has to do with the way that the film's laid out?
I think it has to do with the subject matter, and I think it's almost like this movie is like a litmus test for people. It's like you can tell what kind of people are in your audience by how they react to the movie.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, I'm not gonna lie, like I could see pacing being a thing for some, like the average moviegoer probably. Like
Correct.
It is a little slow, but I mean, I don't know. It's kind of what I expected going into it. So
I'm glad we're talking about the pacing because I was gonna save this for later, but we're already here. So with the pacing, I thought that it was slow in the beginning, but not in a bad way.
No.
Like a comforting way of like lulling you into
exactly. Well, it's a sleepy, like
Dreamy.
country town. Like
Yeah.
it makes sense.
right. But once it ramps up, it never stops, and then you don't even realize that you're here before
The
while
nitrous
it's
is
happening.
engaged.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah, I
if
agree.
you're expecting like 15 more minutes of just like horror bullshit. You know, no offense, but you know what I mean, right? Just the horror stuff of the like the ominous stuff building up, or
Yeah.
like a couple more shadow shots, you know, stuff like that. But with Alex Garland, it's like before you know it, you're there, and it's like, okay, fuck, strap in because
Like
the
no,
movie's
this is happening right now. Like
yeah,
okay.
yeah, exactly. It's like a reverse launch of a roller coaster.
No,
like
it really
honestly,
is.
that's what the movie
That's a
felt
good
like.
point.
Like in the last 15 to 30 minutes, it just took off on you, you know? No breaks after that point.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's what I really liked about the movie. Which I like you brought that up. That I tend to like slower films, and some of those like Eastern European films are really really slow. And watching this, like I got that same type of like that's the vibe that he was going for to build in the beginning with the character of Jessie, so we could literally resonate with her and also know that she escaped to this nice green pasture of a place to relax, which is a very relaxing place. It's supposedly a very
Shire,
safe place.
Straight up.
And I did really feel that with the pacing, and then once it starts, it really just keeps, it doesn't stop. And I think that's why I really liked it. I liked the delivery a lot towards the end, and it ended up being like, we usually talk about the payoff being worth it. It was like super worth it. I was like, oh my god,
I could have never.
Yeah, I would
more worth it.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like
I
Santa,
was
you shouldn't have.
like it was a little slow, but then it not only paid me back with it being really like just in my face, but it's like it took it somewhere I didn't think it was gonna go, and I was like, okay. Yes, like I fuck with this.
Santa brought it early.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have.
I thought so. Yeah.
You guys want to? Well, the cast is very small.
It's a very tiny cast.
and we can't talk about the movie without talking about the
true.
cast because they're in basically 95% of the shots,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear, and I have become a Jessie Buckley stan with her last 3 movies.
Mm-hmm. She's been killing it.
With Men, with The Lost Daughter. And I didn't like I'm Thinking of Ending Things, but I thought that she gave the standout phenomenal performance. So like those are the only 3 things that I know off the top of my head I've seen her in. But she's quickly become one of my favorites. And I think she chooses very interesting roles and complicated roles as well. Like you're not gonna see her as this as a classical comparison. Like it's not like Audrey Hepburn where it's like, okay, she's gonna portray a star in a certain way. Like she gets in the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Like she gets down in the mud making movies, and I just think that's an awesome thing to have nowadays.
I
Like
think so, too.
someone like Jessie Buckley.
She plays characters who feel very lived in, which is
Yes.
nice.
They all feel real.
Yeah, no, they
for
really do.
sure, like actual people. And I mean, that's a simple compliment, but I feel like it's one of the best ones you could give an actor.
That's the
It's
whole point,
it's
right?
So believable.
Yeah, exactly.
She does such a great job of embodying them. They just really feel like it's just versions of her, not
Yeah.
really.
And then we have Rory Kinnear. Are you guys familiar with him?
I honestly don't know.
Have you watched the Daniel Craig Bond films?
Yes.
He is in those, which is like I had to look it up because I've seen some
Mm-hmm.
of them. But he plays like an MI6 like coordinator, like kind of like
Oh.
a behind the scenes guy wearing a suit.
He's
like,
in the
helping
office
with
or something?
plans and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, unless I'm completely wrong about that, but that's how I remember him.
I
He's in 4 of them of those, so that is his biggest movies.
Yeah, I don't recognize him, but I think he did an incredible job
I don't
in
think
this
you
movie.
recognize him after the movie.
Exactly.
Either, right?
Like,
I'm what does he actually
that's
look
what
like?
I want to see. Like, that's what I wanted to say is just like, I mean, this man played what 6, 7 different roles in this
This
movie.
man played
I think
men.
about 8.
Yeah,
About
and
8.
absolutely incredible, and they all were distinct. It's even some of them with the small parts. Like it was a very impressive performance by him. I think.
I mean, Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy walked so he could fly. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
The Nutty Professor and Austin Powers, and now we have the good stuff like Men.
He was watching Medea.
The
to,
guy from Split too.
yeah,
Tyler Perry.
Men is actually a meditation piece on Medea.
You didn't take that away from the film.
He said it was open ended, Alex Garland. That's what I took away from it.
Well, I didn't watch the film. I sat my ass down and listened. It would have been interesting to invite a woman to be on the podcast, and this is where they would be sitting if we knew it.
This would have been the episode to do it.
I think that's the divisiveness that I have seen with the film, that it does seem to some women that have seen it that it's a man mansplaining what women feel about men. And I'm not in the position to know if that's how a movie could fall on somebody's opinion. Like, this is just a guy's opinion on what he thinks it's like to be a girl. But I just think personally that it's Alex Garland is trying to be respectful of. I don't think he's trying to mansplain it. I just think he's trying to, from his outlook, trying to show other guys something, or at least try to teach us something, which
Some people need reminders.
Yeah, some people need I think some people need reminders. We talked about it for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Some people kind of like, I get it, but some people need to be beat over the head with "you should be kind," and then they kind of think about
Well,
it. Like,
shoot,
I
man,
think
with
we
the
should.
movie this heavy-handed, if you don't get it, like what he's trying to say on a very surface level, like a very surface level idea, it's like you are totally missing the movie, right?
You might be
Because-
sick.
might be part of the
I
problem.
think you're
Yeah,
sick.
because some of the stuff in this movie is very obvious.
It is,
and
yeah.
then some of it is not.
I
Like,
know.
I think that it's very complex, but I think it's got the best of both worlds. Like,
Yeah.
the simple,
Yeah.
like small level is just like, okay, this is like a feminist movie about how men suck, right? And it's like, okay, I agree for the most part, but then on the deeper levels, like I can't even pretend that I have a PhD in this kind of stuff, and now I totally understand what he was trying to say with all like the religious and the mythological and all that other stuff. But it's interesting to talk about.
It's
that's
very
for sure.
interesting. Yeah, that's the thought that I had when I was driving home from the theater. Is I was just like, how do you have a movie that is so subtle in a lot of its aspects, and then also one of the most heavy-handed movies I've seen in a while,
Yeah.
and it totally meshes and works. Like it's pretty impressive to me.
So, do you guys want to talk about the movie?
Yeah.
Let's
the
talk
actual
about it.
story.
No spoilers yet.
Listen to us mansplain you this movie.
Listen up, ladies.
Let me tell you what this film was about and why you feel this way.
I do feel weird doing that, right?
Right.
Like, that's why I was like, am I allowed to be an expert on this
That's what I'm
movie?
saying. Like, can we talk about this, or is this part of the problem?
But, well, one last thing with my audience actually is that I felt like a lot of dudes because like it was a lot of dudes, and they were laughing at the moments that were like terrifying for Jesse Buckley.
Yeah.
And then for me, it was like, this is what Alex Garland means about like us participating in it being a litmus test. It's like the dudes who are laughing when a woman is being chased by a man wearing no clothes, like, I don't
She's
think you're supposed to be
terrorized.
laughing.
That's
at
not
that
funny.
point.
Correct.
You know what I
That's
mean?
not
'Cause it's like,
funny.
dude, literally, if that was you, I guarantee you wouldn't be laughing.
That's a fucking nightmare. Like,
That's how,
are you
yeah,
kidding
maybe
me?
that's how it resonates with me a little different. There are parts in this movie where I was like, this is really making me sad because I'm really uncomfortable for her. You know, like I've never been put in a situation like this. Or there's actually one situation in the whole movie that I have been kind of put in, but everything else I'm kind of like, I couldn't imagine having to be put guilt on you that you definitely aren't warranted, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I saw this with my wife, and I actually asked her if she wanted to talk about it a little bit, but she's very pregnant and very tired right now. So, you know me, the parasitic man who put a baby in her. Now she's too tired.
See what you've done.
But she really, really enjoyed the movie. And then she said, like, right off the bat when we walked out of the theater, she's like, they made a movie about everything girls are scared about. Like,
Because like my girlfriend saw it too, and she said her immediate like thoughts of it were men are fucking vile, and I was like, damn. So and she really enjoyed it too. So
one of my wife's big fears, and I don't know if it's because I'm a man, I think it's irrational, is that like that someone is just gonna bust through the door one day
like
and try
take
to
her,
kidnap me.
yeah.
And like as a guy, I never think about that. You know, I mean, I'm not happy when anybody knocks on the door, but I'm not scared either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But it just shows that different worldview that men and women have.
It
that
really is
men
crazy.
will never really understand, even as hard as they try to.
Because even when like just like personal like little story time, but like anytime like we're walking, like when I'm with my girlfriend, we're walking from like her parking garage to her apartment at night, she always says like, I'm so happy that you're here because this is one of the most like terrifying things that I have to do. And in my head, it's like I can't wrap my head around that. Like just walking from one place to the other at night, like it's just a different world. It really is.
Like every time I walk to my car, I don't think this might be like, oh, somebody's just waiting to get at me, you know? And I think Alex Garland has had maybe relationships that he's been exposed to the same type of stuff that you've been with. The both of you have, like they're talking about that where women have shared that with them, and he's kind of like, well, having a film like this that is open-ended is almost like commenting on that, because I won't be able to ever understand as a man. You won't be able to understand, which is why almost the movie plays on that and stays open-ended.
In an interview I was listening to, he made what, like, you know, when people are so creative and this is the only comparison they can come up with, he was comparing it to making a movie about the Holocaust, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's always the only comparison that anybody can ever come up with for things. He was saying that, you know, as a man making this movie, it did feel kind of weird, but just like, you know, I'm not Jewish, but I should be allowed to make a movie about the Holocaust because I have my own world views and opinions and how I think things should be or shouldn't be. And just because I'm not the subject matter of the movie doesn't mean that I can't make a movie about it. But at the same time, you should try to be thoughtful about the subject matter if it's not something you have been through or understand.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that it was a lot of reaching out to people and trying to get more into the headspace of like what it's like to be a woman going through this, well, going through life. I was going to say this kind of stuff, but
This is
honestly
just
going
life,
through
yeah.
life through a woman's point of view. And I mean, it's hard to say he nailed it, but
That's
I think
like-
he got pretty
because
damn
that's what
close,
I like. That's what
right?
I'm saying
To
is
being
like
realistic.
I don't know if I'm the person to sign off on it, but like from my point of view, it seems like he
Pat him on
did
the
a
back. You did a good job, fella.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? But he did. Like the movie was very. I felt like
You're high,
empathetic and like sympathetic towards women.
You really
So-
nailed it, dog.
I know, attaboy.
And that's what I mean. Like, I don't know if I'm the person to comment, just bouncing off what
Yeah.
you're saying, but I did think the movie did a very good job on sending that message. But then you do have, like Gus is saying, some audience member dumb. Be like, but then I'm like that. The message, why is it dumb? Do you think the message was beat up too much over your head, or it really flew over your head, and you just kind of think, oh, I thought this was a horror movie, and like that was dumb. Like, how are they all the same guy? But you don't get what the message is. Like, that doesn't ring any bells. So I mean, it's gonna be divisive, but I do think this movie later, like 20 years later, is gonna be one of those cult movies that people really
seminal
think.
movie.
I feel like it's important, and I mean, I think it's not necessarily a bummer, but it probably is a lot like less accessible to everybody, like Everything Everywhere All at Once is. But like, this is an important movie, I feel like.
Yeah.
And A24 is treating it that way as well, because I heard that they were flying critics and influencers, like movie influencers, and I didn't get an invite. But
So they obviously weren't doing all, you know what I mean?
weird, because you have my address and you've seen my Instagram stories, so I don't know, maybe it got lost in the mail, maybe I didn't check my emails enough, but that they were flying people out to New York, and they were also doing a premiere in LA at like the Alamo Draft House in both coasts, and that they were treating this movie like it was a big deal, because the last time they had done this was for Midsummer. So I think that they're fully behind this movie, like pushing it in later on down the year when the awards come around,
Yeah.
which I really doubt they'll ever touch something like this.
Yeah.
Right? But it'd be fucking rad if they did.
Maybe sound
because,
design,
I
yeah.
mean, Rory Kinnear gives an amazing performance, and I think Jessie Buckley is like Olivia Colman, where it's like she's in something, okay, mark it down for an Oscar nomination. But it's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, I don't think the money is going to show the success, but the staying power that this movie has, I think is really going to stick around with people who saw it. So
I think so too.
I think like what Rose said, like in 20 years, it's probably going to be an important movie if we're still watching movies. I don't know.
No,
It's going to be an important piece of content in 20 years.
Which is what's interesting, because he started writing it 15 years ago. So for it to have resonance maybe in 20 years from now, to have basically it could relate in a 40-year type of span, just really says that kind of what the movie comments about, like there is this root of it always being these themes found between men and women.
It's like it's a primal, like
Primal,
primordial
yes.
thing.
That's what I was
like,
gonna
from
say,
the beginning
yeah.
of time.
Tied to nature.
Because unfortunately, since forever, men have been shitty to women.
Yeah. I think that's what the movie does a really good job.
Themes and ideas. Should we start there?
Yeah, let's start there, and then we can get into the movie. And
I did
talk
want to,
about
I guess
some-
I had learned something. He didn't really break it down too much, but he said that his color palette for the whole movie was to use green and red.
Yeah.
He didn't really explain why, or like which, both of the colors, but
Well, they're opposite of each other on the color wheel, so it might just be something as simple as that. Which is like, that's probably something that is overthought, but it could be as simple as that. I mean, he didn't give a for sure answer.
because I did take it as in, like, obviously the green is how lush everything is. It's tied in with the nature. But I mean, red, there's just too much open interpretations with the color red is, and I just was more curious as to why he chose red. Green makes a little bit of
Red
sense.
feels very masculine and aggressive and bold, but it's used for Jessie Buckley's character. And then the green is kind of used, which is funny because this movie also reminds me of The Green Knight,
Yes.
right? And like the representation of the color green,
Yeah.
like, is it nature or is it rot? You know what I mean? And the whole idea of like nature being kind of evil because it doesn't have like a will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm losing this. But it makes sense in my head,
I
where
understand
it's
what
like
you're saying,
nature
yeah.
doesn't give a fuck. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
No, but I mean, I was going to bring that a point up because last year they have that tie-in together. The Green Knight, the Green Man is an ancient person that's been talked about in many, many cultures. And
It's lore, bro.
it is lore. I mean, in a Q&A after the movie, Alex Garland said he's been trying to write both of these characters into a movie for 15 years, because he's been really enamored with what does the Green Man represent. And the woman character, which is called like Sheila Nagig.
Yep.
And she's even more like open-ended. Like people don't really know what she means, and he's been obsessed kind of with that. And I mean, the Green Man is kind of known as a rebirth type of, like, a new beginning,
Which makes sense.
and we saw that in the Green Knight. And I think that's what really stuck with me with this movie is I do have like he has this like tie-in with nature, and I do really enjoy that seems to be a very folk tale tied in story throughout all cultures, not really just like one specific country. He's found in various like looking this stuff up. He's been in churches, like parts of churches that are from different, like, you know, in Ireland, and then some in France, and then same with the other figure. They've been everywhere, and some people think it has to do with Mother Nature or.
It's kind of how I took it. Was like, okay, like the Green Man, and then like on the other side is the Sheila and the Gig thing, right? And I kind of was like, well, because on the like a mythological sense, I was like, is the Green Man like a deity, like a god, and then like she's like a fertility goddess?
Exactly.
So that's
How
what I
you
took
see
it as.
like,
Yeah.
the imagery, which is striking in
Yeah,
this
it is.
movie,
Correct.
and obviously based on a real thing too. So these are probably shocking to see in
Like,
person. I'd love to see them.
Yeah, no, really cool.
Right?
Because what I took from the statue, like the pillar in the church, is basically like exactly what you said. It's like the Green Man, which is like nature and like, you know, everything, and then the Sheila Nagig is like fertility. So then I almost took it as like what the story is talking about is like toxic masculinity maybe is like this natural thing that just is continuing to be like reborn.
You
know what I mean?
Because I did find it really interesting was that they started pre-production on this movie, and Alex Garland wanted to tie it in perfectly to start recording right when winter ended and spring started, and it got really green. And the Green Man represents a restart every spring. And I did see, like, I did find it that it was cool that the Green Man seeks Jesse Buckley kind of the same way that, yeah, like he needs Mother Nature, it seemed like. And that's where it gets to me kind of where like both of you agree, but it gets to me where it could be open-ended in terms of, because these characters are such, they could represent so much more. I would be really interested to see what other people thought both of them represent throughout the movie.
I think it's really relevant that the whole idea of toxic masculinity being like a natural thing and like it coming in the springtime, because it's like spring break, Daytona Beach, dude, all the toxic
Yeah,
masculinity comes
Jesus
out,
Christ,
right?
fueled by Budweiser. Like, oh my
Brought to you
god.
by Budweiser.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even in that dumb sense, like that kind of is true. Like every spring is when like the debauchery starts, like in the, I don't want to say the world, but you
The
know,
douches return to the beaches.
exactly.
Yes.
Like this is when Channel 5 thrives. You know what I mean? Like spring break, or like as an adult, you ever like maybe pass through the beach or something like that, and you notice it's spring break, and you're like, "What the fuck is
Where the
going on?
yeah.
Why are these vibes so aggressive
Yeah,
and strong right
exactly.
now?"
Feel
Right?
them.
Like, bro, I can smell the vibes. Like this is intense. I should probably get out of here before something. A fight could break out at any moment.
Exactly. For any reason.
And I mean, I did look it up. Rory Kinnear had like interesting quote talking about Sheila. What is it?
Sheila
Nagig. Yeah, the Sheila
Come on, bro.
Nagig
You don't know
being-
Sheila Nagig.
the Sheila Nagig being without explanation, and that everyone has attempted to explain it over centuries, and everyone has different interpretations. I feel like that is where the film hopes to exist. It's a provocation or an examination, but without an explanation.
Yeah, like I don't want to give anything away because we're not doing spoilers yet, but I really feel like that pillar represents the ending of the movie. Like it is really literally just that almost. So I don't know. I thought it was cool.
Correct. I agree.
Before, I think we should probably just start with the like a plot or synopsis or something.
Yeah,
like
let's
that,
start with it.
so that we can actually get into more of like the themes and ideas of this movie. Because I feel like at this point now you can't do it without talking about.
All right.
Correct.
So Harper, who's played by Jessie Buckley, is taking a little vacation retreat to the English countryside because she has lost her husband.
A tragedy, honestly.
Tragically lost her husband. And yeah, she basically gets to this nice farmhouse and all these weird things keep happening to her. And she's like followed by these different men, and they all, for some reason, look the same. You know
Or
what I
do
mean?
they?
Or do they? Because
Yeah.
she never really acknowledges it in the movie. But as the audience, we can see that these are all really similar people, and she is just kind of tormented by these men in this town. And that's kind of what the movie is, basically.
So I think spoilers from this point on,
Yeah.
right? Because even you can't even talk about the beginning of this movie without
No,
talking
correct.
about the inciting incident, right?
Exactly.
So spoilers from here on out. If you haven't seen the movie and we sold you on it, please go see this.
Yeah, go see
Be
this.
careful who you take.
Yeah,
though, like,
yeah, think
for real.
about this.
You don't want to be like Travis Bickle with your hand over your eye, like, oh, did I make a mistake?
Maybe go see it by yourself. I don't know.
Don't just listen to people when they say they like movies. You got to be like, how much, or like, what's your threshold?
Why did
for-
you like it? What other
What's
movies?
the,
do
yeah?
you
When's
like?
the last time you've been to the theater?
Exactly.
The guy with the Travis Bickle profile picture.
you
I think this is a
Dr.
good movie.
Did you think Doctor Strange should have been rated R? Yes. Then no, you don't need to
do
come
not
to
watch
this.
this. Yeah, do not watch this.
But the inciting incident in the beginning is that Harper is going to divorce her husband, and she's making her intentions very clear, and it turns physical, which that feels heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Even
Yes.
though it's very true.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure this is probably happening somewhere right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, her husband ends up taking his life after this accident or incident, and it's never really clearly drawn out if it was an accident
Or on
or if he
purpose.
really did kill himself.
Yeah, that's tough. And one of the toughest parts is he basically holds this over her head too, saying that if you do divorce me, I'm going to do it. And it's going to be your fault and you're going to have to live with that, which is just fucked up.
I do think that in a weird way, his toxic masculinity way of having that hold on her and putting almost like a curse on her and haunting her for life is the reason why everybody looks like Rory Kinnear to her, and like how they all have that same face. It's almost like they all are versions of James, still trying to take that same energy that he was trying to take. Like, no, I need you, and you're gonna be mine, or I'm gonna kill myself. Putting her in a very tough situation. I feel like it was so traumatic that she sees everybody as Rory Kinnear because they all are the same type of guy due to that trauma.
Basically, yeah. That I kind of took the same thing away from it. I think the main reason why they all look the same is it's obviously they're not the same person, but they all have these traits within inside them, and you see throughout the movie how they all show these different traits, and like some are way more obvious than others, like where you have her husband punching her in the face versus like the father talking about how the kid is just troubled, there's nothing wrong with him. Like, that's toxic.
Yeah.
Like, instead of correcting the behavior, he lets this little kid get away with calling Harper a bitch, which they're both totally different, being physically abused and then something like that. But at the same time, like, that is still one of the reasons why things persist.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Go ahead.
Oh, well, no, go on.
I was just gonna say, because I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but like there is obviously a connection later when we see that she goes to the place where she's going to be on vacation. There's a tree there, and I think the tree plays a very, very significant like just theme in the movie.
It's a heavy-handed theme as well.
Yes.
The Adam and Eve stuff,
And
which is in the
that's-
trailer, so
Yeah.
that's not really giving away.
And that's
so
what I was
much.
going to say, kind of tying into what you were saying, Nate, is that it just seems like the stemming tree here is misogyny, and Adam and Eve, the story is misogynistic in its own way in terms of Eve only exists because he comes from the rib of Adam. And so then in that way almost like has to serve him because of that. But I do think that almost all the men in this are the rotten apples that are falling from this tree, stemming
Yep.
misogyny.
Yep.
And
they're
it's as simple as like the apple doesn't
fall
far
far
from the
from
tree.
Exactly,
Right,
and
so
that's
it's
why
like-
that's where I do think people are like, I get it, it's too like spot on the on the nose, but I don't necessarily think everybody thinks that way though. I
Yeah.
think that we see it that way because we watch so many films and
We're
know that
looking for the
everything
symbolism,
is going to
yeah.
be like in a Garland movie, something like this is going to be in it, and it's going to be there for a purpose.
Because I loved personally, like when he said, like, I mean, the allusion to the apple tree being basically like men, like when a man falls off the tree basically, and you don't do anything about it, it just turns to rot. It's like, so, but
Exactly.
why don't you pick up the apples? Like, why don't you do something about it? You know what I mean? So,
Nah.
yeah, no, we're just gonna leave him there.
Boys being boys.
The wasp will come.
the wasp,
Yeah,
will
which is
come.
like that's some violent imagery
Yeah.
too. Is like that you rot and then wasps.
And it's
are
such like a
coming.
no biggie. It's like, why don't you just do something about it? Like, there's a lot of little nodes, and you know,
He's like, make chutney.
yeah, do whatever you want to us. Yeah, exactly. You can chop us up, make chutney. We don't care.
We just
but
want you to love us.
exactly.
He is the embodiment of like British stuffiness.
Yes.
that
yeah,
character, Jeffrey.
scrumptious apples. Like, Jesus Christ.
I wanted to go back to the idea of like Rory Kinnear. Like, is it all one guy?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a bunch of different men who she sees the same way? And Alex Garland said that like at least two comparisons that you can do, and they sound very similar, is either that they are all one man, or like they all do have the same face, or that it's all the like she can only see men one way right now, and that's why she's seeing them all this way. But the fact that it's never acknowledged is not to make her an unreliable narrator, but it's just meant to like unsettle you because of the like putting yourself in her
headspace, yeah.
So it's like those aren't the only two options, but those are like the most surface level of like,
Yeah.
okay, is it this or is it this? And they're very similar, which is kind of confusing, but I like that it's never addressed.
I do too.
I will say the confusing part of either of those to me still bears the question that there is an entity though, because obviously there's something that even she is seeing change.
Something
in her
has
eyes.
happened,
It's,
yeah.
it is something that is changing, like between all these characters. Because at the end, we're gonna get there, obviously. But it just seems like there is an entity that is ever changing as well.
There is something at the end that confirms that she's not an unreliable narrator and that
Correct.
something did happen. So we at least know that walking out of the movie is that some shit really did go
Yeah,
down
it's
here,
not
but who
just like
knows
what really happened. Yeah.
It wasn't like at the ending of like Saint Maud where you kind of wait.
Oh, shit! Yeah,
Yeah. That doesn't seem open ended, but everything else pretty much is.
Yeah.
Correct, exactly.
Rory Kinnear playing the different characters, they all kind of embody like it's really an opinion fest, like more than any other movie that I can think of recently, where it's like I could say it's this and you could say it's that, and I don't think either of them are wrong. It's just a personal
It's however you
view
saw the
on
movie,
it, right?
I think.
So do you guys think that these are all a bunch of different men and she's giving them the same face, or do you think it's different men and she can't see that they're different men? Like, what do you think is going on?
So
in this town?
realistically, I think that they're all individual people. They're not the same person at all, right? I don't even think that she can see them as all the same face. Like, they probably really do have different faces.
It's like it's for us.
It's a
right?
symbol. It's for the audience. It's showing that these men all hold these toxic traits.
They're all the rotten apples.
They're all exactly like they all are cut from the same cloth, basically. Like they're not the same, and that's why, like I was saying earlier, they all show their traits differently. Like, you know, how the father treats her versus how Jeffrey treats her. Like, he won't let her do anything. Like, he won't let her carry the bags. He won't let her do this. He won't let her
Tries
do
to be
that.
the knight in shining armor that
Exactly.
nobody
He's
asked
a white
for.
knight. Like, nobody
Yeah.
fucking needs that. Like, let her be her own person. And they all go about, you know, showing these traits off differently. But at the end of the day, they're the same face because they negatively impact women. You know what I mean? So I think that's how I took it.
I did even took it as an the landowner. He picks up her stuff and is the white knight, but then later we find out he says a line that, "Oh, my father always said I couldn't be a soldier."
He's got daddy issues.
And it's like you're only trying to, I'm going to go out there and save you, be the white knight, because I want to prove my dad that I am a man worthy of protecting a woman. It's like you're using her guilt at the expense of you becoming a better person, which is like I had notes of kind of what you're saying. Like there is like a adjective for each one of these guys as to like justify the way that they're acting. So like James is scared and he's hurt. And you have like the stalker's innocent, like he's not gonna do anything to you. I don't think he even saw you. And the landowner is just nice. He's just being a nice guy.
He's literally a nice guy.
Be like, yeah, he's carrying your stuff, like, you know. And then it's like the troubled incel. He's like, oh no, he's just young. He's like he's just been like that. Be like, you're excusing that behavior. And then you have the holy vicar,
the horny father,
which is just basically he uses that religion to basically judge her, but then also try to get what he really wants from her in that way. So denoting her down, which I've heard many women like men, that's like a kind of game that they play. Like, let me bring you down, tell you, well, you're not worth anything, but I'll still take you.
Yeah,
because
that's
like
shitty.
I'm like I'll be the bigger man and I'll still take you even though you're troubled. And that's like the holy vicar the whole time, you know. And then we have the incompetent police officer who just lets the guy go because like, well, he didn't do anything, man. What are we supposed to do? It's like, well, he was stalking me. We're like, oh well, you know, if something happens again, just call us. And it's always like, and that's like representing the society as like a man always kind of like, just let us know when something bad happens and then we'll do something
instead of
about
taking
it.
precautions to make sure that nothing ever happens.
Correct. And
Yeah.
like it always just seems like there's an adjective for every person for them to be like an excuse for them to be a piece of shit guy.
You know, the only one that I think I walk away from the film not understanding is the barkeeper. But
Correct.
then I think it's as simple as like being a complicit man. Of
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I didn't actually do anything wrong, but I know that my friend was making you uncomfortable, but like, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you're uncomfortable and okay. Like when he's like, oh, her money's no good here. And he just is like, okay, but like,
Yeah.
why not pick her side? Like, why do you
Exactly.
automatically stick with
With the man?
with the guy, right? And I honestly think his is as simple as that.
I think you're right.
And then I think the bar patrons, like the two like British bruvs, right?
Yeah.
Like I think they're like the silent, violent types, right? Where it's like they're the type of dudes who go out, sit in the corner, and like they got 15 she's fines, 16s. Oh, on God, she's this. Like, you know what I mean?
correct,
Like,
yeah.
Correct.
They're the dudes who sit in the corner and just talk about the girls all night instead of actually try to approach them or be normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we only really see one like outburst from them. But I do think that that's what they were trying to portray. I think of all the characters, the the two guys in the bar and the barkeeper have the least to do with her story. So then if this guy or all these men are just a representation of the different sides of James, I think maybe those are the traits that he might have not had, but are still prevalent in a lot of men.
I can see that.
I see that.
So
can see
maybe
that.
the vicar, the cop, the landowner, and the little boy are all traits that James has.
So
and
they
that's
take a
why
bigger
those
role.
4 are the ones that are like really haunting her,
see
and
that.
then the other ones are just kind of like tertiary
In the
on
background.
on the side. Like these are the bigger problems of men, of like the silent types or like the complicit types, where they don't really show their aggression, but it's more of like an internal thing.
And I
Yeah.
will say that I didn't even feel necessarily that way, that they were going to be connected up until a certain point towards the end of the movie, where we literally see transformations of them into what ends up being James. So then that's when I started thinking, okay, well, they are tied into him in some certain way, because after a certain point, we do get, I guess, her trying to straighten some of the trauma out.
The reason I think that I don't know if it starts this way, but like I think it ends as them all being in different interpretations of James, is that when he killed himself, the way his body looks after are things we see
In the
on the
people.
other
Yep.
characters.
Exactly.
Correct.
So this is a heavy spoiler, but he has the broken ankle,
Yep.
and
The
the
fucked up
split
hand.
hand,
It's
right?
disgusting,
And
yeah.
when he died, his hand was split by the
Yep.
pole, and he had a broken ankle.
So did you notice that he had 3 injuries when he killed himself? It was the arm, the leg, and then he had a gash in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And none of those people had gashes until the very end, where she picks up the hatchet. So then I'm led to believe that she hits him over the head with the hatchet. You know what I
Correct.
mean? And creates the final blow. I thought that was
No,
interesting.
I agree. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves,
yeah.
but it's just because
Well, it doesn't
the
matter.
themes.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It's just because the themes are so. There was those connections that I've been wanting to talk to you about, you guys, and it does seem like we're all on the same page, and maybe that's why people think it's not as deep as it
hive-minded
is.
men.
Yeah.
The
Here we
wasp.
go, all thinking the same thing.
But I think it really just comes down to how well he executed this movie, and like it really just shows off Alex Garland's style, and why in a gnarly way he gave these themes that we're talking about that aren't necessarily really what the movie visually is showing you. It's all of this theme is like what's going on in the background, and this trauma with her is just being visualized, and it's really, really bloody trauma, because it's something probably the hardest type of trauma to get over, an unwarranted trauma.
I feel like the plot of the movie and like the writing of the movie is all just the themes. Like this isn't a plot heavy movie.
No.
This is a vibe. This is a vibe aesthetic movie.
It is.
Of, like,
Yeah, I
it's
see
a
what you mean.
feeling.
Some real life fibrosis.
Yeah, he's trying to create a feeling more than or he's saying something with the images more than.
It's true.
It's like that's why it's so heavy handed. I think.
Because I mean, there realistically is not really like the plot is that she's at the place.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
then
mean?
some stuff happens.
And then
She's
the
being
rest of
stalked.
the movie is driven by, like you said, the themes.
I mean, even when you read the synopsis of the movie, it's just as simple as in the aftermath of a personal tragedy, Harper retreats alone to a beautiful English countryside, hoping to find a place to heal. But someone or something from the surrounding woods appears to be stalking her. What begins as a simmering dread becomes a fully formed nightmare, inhabited by her darkest memories and fears.
yeah.
So it's literally, I think it goes down. Alex Garland is putting us in her mind the whole movie, and I'm sure some people understand stuff and others don't. But I do think you especially resonate if you've had any type of that like trauma. And I did want to say I had this written up as something that I found interesting. This movie reminded me a lot of how people feel, and like watching it of Mother, like Aronofsky's Mother. I felt the same way, that like I guess Darren Aronofsky as a man isn't the person to be talking about this, but I as a man felt like moved, or I understood what he was the message he was trying to get across, and I feel like I learned as a man because of it, and I don't think that's something negative to put the movie down.
Did you like Mother, Nate?
I do like Mother. I do like Mother a lot, actually.
I remember not knowing how to feel.
I didn't like it the first time that I'd seen it, and then I've watched it a few more times, and I actually really do
I've only
like that
watched it the
movie.
one time, and I was just like, I was shocked. You know what I mean? And I was taken aback, but I didn't know. I was like, did I like that, or was it just so much shock value that I can't?
Every
even
time I
believe
see it,
what
I
saw?
like it more
I do
and
think
more.
I like it.
Yeah.
No, I do like that movie, but I've seen it twice, and I do start to liking it more. The second time that I saw it, I liked it more, knowing once like what you're getting yourself into. You know, the first time you watch it, it is almost
what
like a
the
scare,
fuck is
a
going
scare fest.
on?
Yeah, that movie is a lot scarier than people would think.
Yeah.
Good thing British people aren't real. To
Yep.
I think we have to talk about the
Oh,
the
yeah.
climax, because if you've seen the movie, I'm sure this is what you're here for.
I'm sure you've been
I'm sure you
had
haven't stopped
nightmares
thinking
about it.
and you want to know what the fuck is going on,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know if we're gonna give you an answer, but I think that we can also share your pain.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say that starting this, my favorite aspect of this movie is once the sequence really starts getting heavy, and so we get the Green Man blowing, well, what is it, dandelions into her, and she almost takes it like a drug induced, and she starts tripping out, and I think that's where this movie really becomes one of the favorite horror segments I've seen in a long time. Like, she has like this really like the nightmare, and there's the I guess you'd call it the statue with both of the faces on it. The pillar, and she's like holding it, and it's like dark, and then you can just see how it's glowing red, and then there's all these like just some montages of like what's happening through her life, and it just becomes trippy as fuck. And then it ends up ending where I think is crazy is the Green Man is trying to put his hand through the mail, whatever you would call it,
mail slot. Yeah,
the mail slot, and she has a knife and she stabs his arm. And I mean, that's when it just ramps the fuck up. You know what I mean? Because the arm just starts to pull away, and it just splits in half. And the way that it splits in half, it just really reminded me of something that we would watch in Cronenberg or in a Carpenter movie. And then I was like, holy shit. And there was just blood everywhere. And I was like, it just really started from that get-go, you know?
Sure know how to paint a picture.
Yeah, like, Jesus. But no, because then, I mean, yeah, this part's crazy because you start seeing that the entity or the man or whoever it is that's chasing her is constantly changing back and forth between all these different men she's met throughout the town and has had these negative experiences with. And they keep bringing up, you know, they almost like, especially the father, like really devolves into who he really is, like, you know what I mean, as a person and as a man.
Monster.
At this point, I did think too on the second watch, is it because he threw it with dandelions? Like, is this all a trip?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I
Just
think
that segment, right? Like that nightmare segment seems like the tripping part.
kind of. I honestly, I don't think she was tripping off the dandelions. Like, the dandelions to me just represent like the nature and like man spreading his seed, I guess. Like, that's kind of what I took away from it.
True.
But
Because it does come up the first time that she sees him, when she's
dandelions
running
are a
away.
lot. It's
When
in there a
she's
few
running
times.
away from the first time that she sees the entity, there is a dandelion, like one in the middle of the frame, and she runs by it and picks it up with her nose.
Because that happens. There's that part where the dandelion falls in that dead deer. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm glad you brought that up, because
You
I
wanna talk
wanted
about
to
that?
talk about that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
imagery, which
Yeah.
I think is probably the most
It
heavy-handed
was very-
piece
yeah.
of the movie. And it's like, you know, the woman is represented as this like fragile dough that's, you know, kind of Mother Nature-y, and she's dead and rotting, and what is on her? A bunch of maggots. Men
that are
sucking
having
life force out of
having
her.
their way with
Yeah,
how
exactly.
whatever they want from her.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
thought that was the most heavy-handed. The
I
more I
did
thought
too.
about it too, I was like, that obviously meant something. Where it feels like it could mean nothing and be just a cool transition shot, which it's not.
But it meant
actually
everything.
You
plays
know,
a heavy
you know what
theme
it
in the
reminded me
movie.
exactly of is Mandy.
Hey,
Yeah, yo.
Which is another director.
man.
I was gonna bring up when we brought up Yorgos and Alex Garland be like the director from Andy. What is it, Cosmos?
Panos Cosmatos.
Panos, yeah.
Which basically in that movie is the same thing. It's the death of, you know, the idea of that man wanting Mandy. So I think it's interesting that he used that in this one too.
So
That is good imagery though. The deer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Are we gonna? My
Okay.
stomach is already hurting, dude.
Okay.
Thinking about this.
Is it because you have to give birth?
I know.
You know what's funny is my wife and I always talk about
My
how
wife.
movies and TVs always find this way of being like extremely relevant to like your situation that you're in. There's always you'll be like, you know, going through a hard time or something. Like maybe you lose your job or something, and then you go home and you watch the TV show and the character loses their job, and you're like, what the fuck? How did you
Come
know
on,
that?
leave me
Right?
alone. Yeah.
So, with with my wife being pregnant, we had talked about it before. Like, you know, I made the stupid joke. I was like, you know, if I could carry the baby and give birth, I would do it for you, right? And then I watched this movie and I'm like, never fucking mind, dude.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah. So basically, we have the ending scene where she's getting chased around by this entity, and all of a sudden,
It starts rebirthing itself.
it gives birth. Yeah.
The Green Knight comes out. He starts laughing. And he
Yep.
starts having the rebirth right there.
And I thought this was really interesting part because this happens like 4 or 5 times. This constant cycle of like being born and then the
I think
rebirth
he does
and
it
all
like
that.
5 times. After like the third one, I was like, you're overdoing it.
I thought it was interesting because at that point, like you would expect like Harper as the main character to be like freaking the fuck out. You know what I mean? but she's not. She's almost like just like staring at it like it's like, this is disgusting.
I think she's well
Like,
past
you know
the
what I
point
mean?
of that.
Exactly. And I basically just took that like symbolically as like she's just kind of come to grips, and instead of being like having these traits bring her down, she's almost looks at it like, you're a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like, you're disgusting. I do not need this. Like, get this shit out of my face. Like,
I think she understood what was going on, and that's the reason why we get so many transformations, and it becomes almost too many of them, is because at that same point that the monster or the entity is still trying to get at her and like, oh, pay attention to me, but she's so over it at this point. She understands that you're just trying to get my attention because you need my attention to grow. And then its final last attempt to try to get that from her is becoming James.
I also think that furthers my point that like the transformations kind of back up my point about the like what traits James has, because the ones who are reborn are the ones
The main
that
ones.
are the main ones.
Yeah.
It's not the barkeep or the bros. You know what I mean? It's Jeffrey. It's the little boy.
The
it's the
vicar.
vicar, and then
the green guy.
Yeah, and we eventually get to James,
Right.
right? And I also think the imagery of the green man having the broken ankle and the fucked up arm
Yeah.
is like, that is the cementing proof that like this is finally happening, or like that this is real and it hasn't been a dream.
Correct.
Yeah. So I also think that the reason, like you said, that she has that like I'm over this shit kind of attitude towards it by the end is because even in the beginning of the movie, she fights back like against this idea of the, like, I'm not going to take this on as my fault, even if you're telling me that it's going to be my fault. Like, you're going to have to live with that, not me. But because of, you know, what happens to her with all of these men, even though she doesn't feel that way, it's like they're trying to beat that into her the way that like society would do that in real life. Of like, maybe in these real life situations this does happen, and you know, someone kills themselves and they're telling you it's your fault, and then society backs that up by like, well, it is your fault. And even if you don't feel that way, the pressure of it is probably mounted on her so much.
Yeah, that's like a
that it's
tidal wave.
I'm,
Yeah,
like, hey,
that's
I'm
too
gonna take
much.
this weighted blanket and throw it off of me finally.
Correct.
Because you guys have been trying to smother me this entire time.
That's a good point.
I mean, that's the same reason she tells the vicar to go fuck off. You know, it's like, how dare you say or even suggest that it is somewhat my fault? Because it's not her fault.
No, it's not.
Like, she is a person, and she has no reason to be in the situation she doesn't want to be in. And why should she feel guilty that James, and I mean, that's the whole other thing. When he is sitting there at the end, he does make it seem like he says to her again as a reborn, like, this is all your fault. Like, none of this would have happened
just
if you
cements
just
it.
loved me.
Yeah.
And that's why she looks like the axe, because fuck this. Like, I'm done. Be like, I'm killing this now.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm killing you. Like, I'm gonna like, no, I did it. Yeah, I killed you.
That's the heavy-handedness of
Yeah.
the movie too. Is like, even in this, like, we're like, okay, what does this all mean? Why is this green man birthing, or why are these men all birthing different versions of themselves, right? And like we talked about with like the spring and the rebirth cycle, and it's like, even after this crazy, trippy, biblical event, or what, I don't even know what the fuck to call it, right? Like this weird, bizarro universe that it takes place in, you still come full circle back to the idea that this is my fault, and if you like, all I want is for you to love me. And it's
That's what
like
he
it's
says.
like it's divorced dad energy. You
Yeah,
know
it
what I
is.
mean?
It's
It's like
like,
that's
your mother
pathetic.
broke my heart.
Yeah.
Even though, and you know all those things I did. Well, she broke my heart.
It was
You know
her
what I
fault.
mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I mean, and I think it's a good point that you brought it up, because that's what he says. What do you want from me? And he says, I want your love.
Which is like too late for that.
Yeah,
This is too
exactly.
late. What
It's
are
like
you
you've
talking
had
about?
it. Like,
And I mean, I did want to, I guess this brings it back to the beginning, other aspects that I want to bring up with this movie. I thought it was really cool how it starts with like this orange tone over like the whole sunset sky. I thought that was like one of the
And
most
the Elton
gorgeous
John song
scenes.
playing.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole parts of him falling, being in slow-mo and looking at her, I thought that brought so much to the trauma. The fact that it did keep killing her. But like, did he see me when he fell? Like, did we lock eyes? Because I do think if you were in her position in that moment, knowing that he actually is killing himself either by accident or on purpose, that through the eyes you would say so much in that half second to be like, this isn't what I wanted. Like, I hope I could say paragraphs to you in those half seconds that our eyes locked in. And that's why it's killing her, because like, is it even humanly possible that we could have locked in eyes? But obviously, as the audience, we do see in slow-mo that they do lock in
they
eyes.
do.
And I think that's almost just plays so much more on the trauma, because she keeps getting all of those flashbacks because she is connected in that way for his, like, she saw him right before he died, the last moment of his crisis.
I wonder if the orange is because you know how, well, unless I'm wrong here, her color is red, right? And then the green is for nature and man and all that. But I think maybe the reason it starts that yellowish orange is kind of like when they have like those danger meters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like
Yeah.
the movie starts in yellow orange and then it goes to red.
Yeah.
I
Because
mean,
Mandy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Like it gets totally turned up from that point of like now we're in the red, we're in the danger zone.
Right now it was just cooking.
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
slightly boiling.
I did like the orange. I take it as like that's like the fact that it's a flashback. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really did like how they, instead of just showing you everything at once, how he spliced like the different parts of that interaction throughout the entire movie.
Correct.
You got to see how
it's not
gnarly
just
it really
an
was.
exposition fest.
No,
in the
exactly.
beginning.
Like it usually like relates to the conversation that she's having at the time, and it always works.
I did like that there were just certain parts in the movie in the middle of it that they were used as like a flashback to her thinking about it in the middle of her folding clothes, right? Where it seemed like kind of, oh, nothing's going on. When she's by herself, she would have those moments, and then she like walked out, and that's when she went on the walk.
This is what he does in Annihilation as well. It's when Natalie Portman has these moments of isolation and a moment to herself, even in this fucked up shimmer zone or whatever.
It's that, huh?
That's what her mind
The
is
root
still
of the
going
problem.
to, is the guilt that she's living
Yeah.
with. And that's why I do think these movies are so similar. Like, that's how he likes to tell a story. So when these characters are alone, it isn't just this moody moment of watching them, you know, make expressions and stuff like that. Like, it's these haunting dream
He
sequences.
uses
that
it
they're
to
having.
its full ability for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
This is the third time I think that he's used the same cinematographer. Rob Hardy was
Well,
the same.
in Devs too. He's
Oh, okay, so he just says he likes using him a lot because he isn't he doesn't overthink shots either.
He's subtle as well.
He's subtle.
He said in an interview that he thinks that he's an underrated DP because he doesn't linger and he doesn't really show off. Like, okay, look how cool this shot is, and it's
Yeah.
gonna be 15, 20 seconds. Like, there are these images that if you don't pause them, it might go right past you. How like
It's true.
stunning it was.
I actually like that you said that, because I've actually been thinking about the little part where it's just like 3 to 4, maybe 5 second shots of like nature, like the flower and the tree and stuff
Oh,
like
I know
that.
what you're talking about.
And I was almost like, in my head, I was like, I wonder why they didn't linger on that. Because like in a lot of these art house movies, like you think they'll show it for 20 fucking seconds, but it was just like these little. It was just really nice. It was really well
It's like
done.
these beautiful National Geographic like
Yeah.
pictures. Where you're like, how the fuck did they
I know.
get that shot?
Yeah.
And in that
right?
way, it kind of reminds you in the way when you think about a memory of when you've walked down a pasture like that. It's always images of, oh, I remember the flower.
I
remember
really
the-"
like that tree that I like. Yeah, it's always
It's
stuff
never
like
just
that.
a full video running. It's always images, and I think it worked because by the time the next image that we do get is Jesse walking in the middle of all this, so you're already kind of in that atmosphere because he already almost threw memories at you into your brain. Like, oh, you remember how this smells. You saw how the dandelions were
Perfectly
there.
done. That's
And-
exactly how I felt.
because there was like the dandelions are highlighted too on that dead tree. There's like a bunch of them at the top. Yeah, I mean, this movie's imagery and just cinematography I thought was really, really good. It just stood out, and obviously where they are in Britain, just beautiful.
yeah, it's
spot.
gorgeous.
The countryside looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I would love to visit
For
something like
sure,
that.
it's crazy.
And it just juxtaposed what's going on so
Yeah.
well. You know what I mean? It's kind of like in The Shining, the same way. Like, it's such a nice little remote spot, but that's the weirdest shit that's gonna happen.
Since we're
It all
talking,
goes back to The Shining.
here we go. Since we're talking about the technical side really fast, I just want to like the score and the sound design.
Oh,
I was just about
yes.
to say that.
Yeah, like fucking haunting. I
Yeah.
like specifically. I keep thinking about the scene, but the church scene.
Oh,
where she's
man.
having her meltdown and she screams and like the score matches up perfectly with her scream. It's incredible.
There's a really
dude.
cool lens flare shot on that when the father comes out. Did you guys catch
Yep.
that? It's a small circle and it becomes bigger.
Yep.
The more I thought that was
The music is
Outstanding.
done by Ben Salisbury and Jeff Barrow, and I thought that was an amazing score.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
haunting,
Haunting.
Yes.
visceral, and going back to Annihilation, I thought Annihilation had a beautiful
Yep.
score as well. And I just think Alex Garland fully understands. I think this is interesting because Alex Garland started as an author, not just a screenplay writer, but like writing books. And then he became a writer, and then writer-director, and then now, like, this is his medium. He's left behind like books and just writing, right? So I think that marriage of the visuals with the audio and like his direction, like he's fully in his movie maker bag now.
He's well rounded.
Exactly, because I think he understands how important the music and the imagery is, along with
The writing.
With the writing, and I think he makes really bold choices in both fronts.
He does.
And
I
like the
agree.
people that he works with too. Like I think they probably have a lot of creative freedom to really like technical like flex themselves, you know what I mean, like to just really show off in those ways, even though it's also like subtle, and I feel like it engulfs you and you don't know what's happening to you until you really take a second to realize what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was so immersed in that movie, and it was done in such a simple way.
Because the music is really good, but I would think about it more after it had passed than when it was happening. Because when
Correct.
it was happening, I was like, ah!
Holy shit.
I was white knuckled holding on to my
exactly.
seat. Like I can't hear anything right now. I'm just seeing these haunting images.
No, yeah, I agree.
And the sound design is also incredible, and the way it's used throughout the movie.
The tunnel scene.
Yeah, exactly. So and you've probably seen it in the trailer.
Yeah.
It's the ha ha ha, right? So that plays a huge role throughout
It
the
does.
climax of the movie, and I don't remember like personally, but I've heard that they also use Rory Kinnear's sound design as well, like his voice like during that scene. So like the actors themselves playing such a big part in the sound of the movie, like just adding to that two-man team of
Pretty
like
cool.
how this movie is being done.
That was the one part where I was a little confused on how much that played a role, like her voice, it playing back over, because that's after she does that is when we get the entity like rising up.
It's used for moments of confusion as well. So like that's kind of interesting. It's that this little cute voice song thing that she was doing, and then it being used for like when she's the most puzzled. It's this movie's abrasive synth.
And it almost felt like it was waiting for a voice or a tone of Mother Nature to arise. That's almost like what I took from it. But I was like, that's one of the things, like, because he doesn't want to answer them, I might not ever get answered for, but I'm not too certain on how integral of a role her doing that on the tunnel played throughout the whole story.
Dude, how disturbing was the green dude's screeches? Those are terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, that is, like, not human. Like, that shit, I don't know. I did not like that.
I did not like
did
that.
not like that.
I don't know what I thought. I just want to say I didn't like it.
I was not a fan of that. It's screaming banshee.
Talking about parts that made me really, really uncomfortable. The part where the young incel is so okay. This is another movie that has a crow in it, which I thought was interesting. It's just,
What
I
was the
didn't
last
expect. I mean, we talked about how in Eggers there's always a crow, and like most scary movies, once there's a crow, you know shit's about to go down. But in this one, I thought it was funny. But where they already killed the raven, and he puts the mask on it, and he's just sliding it on that table. That sound that it
I was
made,
gonna explode.
I was ready to explode.
Yeah.
Both times, I was like, this needs to be 10 seconds shorter because I'm ready to fucking walk out of this.
So
thing.
uneasy,
This sound
yeah.
is making me like, and that really doesn't happen to me very often. Where a sound in a movie gets me that like, it was getting me mad. I was like, hurry up! It's just fucking uncomfortable.
I think another reason the ending is so heavy-handed with the imagery, and I feel like we've kind of been like dancing around the subject, but the births that take place, right? Like
The pussy.
we haven't really talked about how disturbing it is.
Yeah, it's
right?
disgusting.
And I know that Alex Garland, which I thought this was cool, is that his daughter had introduced him to Attack on Titan. So
Oh, that's
the
what I was gonna bring
imagery
up.
of the Green Man and like that shocking look, and the way that Attack on Titan treats like human mutation, which is another huge theme in Alex Garland's work, literally in all three of his movies. Some
Yeah.
form of human mutation takes place, whether it's the AI, the entities from the Shimmer, or in this
one,
movie,
yeah.
right? And he was saying how like the transformation that we see in this movie, it's only so uncomfortable because it's something that is real. Like the subject of birth itself, whether it be like vaginal or through a C-section, is mostly uncomfortable for people. And that it's the most natural thing you can do. So
Yes.
for it to be so uncomfortable, it just says something about people. Like in our brains, in our brain chemistry, all of us, it's something that no one really wants to talk about, even though it's how we all got here.
Correct.
You know what
That's
I mean?
big
It's like,
true.
we're all somebody's kid. Not everyone is somebody's parent, but everybody is somebody's kid.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has had to go through this traumatic, like, I don't want to say subject, but moment in their
Event,
life.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is something that he's obsessed with. Is
It
like
does-
birth and rebirth.
It dissects it the same way that X dissected like sex. Be like, you're so fast and like want to look down on it, but each one of us does it, or each one somebody
Yeah.
is a product of it. Everybody literally is a product of it.
So, go ahead.
I was gonna say I thought it was interesting in that scene how like honestly the births got more and more like grotesque. I felt
Yes.
like because at first you had what seemed to be like a natural birth basically, and then it spreads to the back, and then finally James comes out of somebody's mouth, and it's just like it just gets progressively
James,
more
legs
unsettling.
first,
You know what I
too.
mean? Like
I
holy
literally
shit.
felt sick.
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna I'm not even gonna lie.
it was a lot, dude. It was
made
a
me
lot.
very nervous.
And
for
just to watch,
being
like-
in the delivery room.
the one who gave birth, like watch him fall off as like a meat sack after too. It's just like
That's
oh
the
my
total Attack on
God.
Titan shit, where it's
Yeah.
like, how do we make you feel totally uncomfortable looking at something that's natural? Well,
Especially when the kid, like, oh my god.
And how about I did
Yeah.
just
and they're
think-
all born with the broken ankle
Yep,
and
and
the
the
fucked
fucked
up
up
hand,
hand.
which is like furthering the idea that this is all one
Connected,
entity.
yeah.
I did think it was funny that when she sees the kid again, she's like, "What are you gonna do? Hurt me again?"
Yeah.
And
And yes, later on, that is what's going to happen.
Yes,
She is
exactly what's
hurt
going to
you
happen.
again.
And I did think it was funny that that's exactly after she's talking to James, and she touches the hatchet, boom, title card drops. You know what I mean? And then there's not much left to the movie besides literally, I think 5 minutes.
He
but
won up to drive my car.
yeah, that's what I was about to say. Or like Fresh. He was like, let me show you.
Title
Let
card,
me do a
hour, 38
double.
minutes.
Yeah, no, right. 5 minutes before it's about to end. How about that? But I actually did like the ending. And I thought that's what you were talking about, like when you do know it's real, because
Yes.
her friend comes, but she's been talking to the whole movie, which is the only other girl in this movie.
The
So-
police
And the police
officer.
officer.
Oh, that's true. But to be fair, both of them are very seem to be.
Well, we have the helpful friend, right? Which is like every scary movie kind of needs one
Yeah.
of these. And then, but I also think that the police officer, the woman, is meant to show the complicit women in the world of, I guess I believe you, and I hope you're okay.
I like
but
that.
this
That's a good
isn't
point.
really something I'm gonna get involved with, because in an even more heavy-handed movie, I feel like the woman police officer would be the like a third character almost, like trying to figure out what the fuck is going on.
I
Or like
see.
this would become a personal thing for her, like
As a woman
it's
or
happening
whatever.
to one of my sisters.
Okay, yeah,
You
you're
know
right.
what I
If
mean?
it was, like,
Yeah.
oh
But
yeah, that's a
I
good
feel like
point.
that's not what the point is. The point is
Interesting.
that she's just kind of there to also be complicit, like the barkeeper.
I'm not gonna lie, I did take her as a helpful person. Like
Really?
I did. Like I really and you could even I felt like Harper's whole demeanor kind of changed around the woman. Like I felt like she seemed more comfortable, and at that point, she does help her. Like they do take the man away, and
Yeah.
it's not her fault that the dude got released at the end.
I think it might be more of just a woman being more comfortable explaining what happened to her
Right.
to another woman,
Exactly,
than
yeah.
a man who would judge her. It's not that the woman is judging her, but it doesn't mean she's going to help her. Either.
Yeah,
it's
that's
more
true.
of a just I feel more comfortable telling you this.
That's true. Yeah.
But her best friend character is on her side and does see. She's like, another one happened, or another, and she starts telling all the aspects of all the shitty men she saw on her trip, and she's like, all right, I'm gonna go out there, because the whole time she's talking to her through FaceTime, which I thought that's when cell phones being used in movies works. I guess you go to a place where you would lose signal, right, and then you kind of throw that whole equation out of you can't really use your phone. Or she did end up still sending the text with the address, so okay, that still got through. That's how she got there. But I did end up liking that she is the supportive friend and the friend that's kind of there and on her side, and seeing the things, because she's a woman, understands what's coming from it.
I think the technology in this movie is meant to confuse you and to be disorienting more than his other two movies, where technology are a main piece of the story.
Correct.
So the cell phone is acting up and it's showing these disturbing
face, right?
imagery of a screaming man, right? Which would probably be Rory Kinnear as well. But
I didn't catch him, but I did see
it's
that.
as surface level as a man not letting you talk to your friend, right?
Yeah.
But also, I just think it's interesting that this is the first time that technology is not a mainstay in the movies. It's not really helpful or unhelpful. It's just not really
Not there.
It's not a centerpiece of the movie.
It was used as a phone would. You could have they cut the line off. But she got her call out, or text to where she was, and that's how at the end we get that's why I like it, because you get to see the car is fucked up and there's blood on it, so something has happened. And whether I took it as in her trauma of being out in that pasture, and like her having to go through all of the trauma was such a bloody battle that there is actual physical like manifestations of this, like that battle that she went through, and her friend at the end seeing that, her smile, be like, oh, you conquered it though.
So I think it's open-ended to the point where it's like she might have either just killed a man, who knows who it was, like it could have just been one of these men from the town who didn't actually have his face, right? And like it's kind of like a psychological freak out.
Yeah.
Or this entity is real, and it really is this shape-shifting man or man beast thing, right? That she did kill. Or like you said, it's this physical bloody battle that's like, was this all in her head? But like, okay, maybe she crashed her car, maybe she accidentally cut herself, and like you just don't know.
Yeah,
and like, and that's where the movie actually ends, and it leaves you with the like, so what did happen?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is this a Fight Club scenario? Was she beating the shit out of herself?
Yeah.
You know? I don't
I
think so. I think it's one of the other two.
No, I think something happened. What I honestly think, like, and I still don't even know if I really like believe this wholeheartedly, but just what I've taken away so far is I honestly think that the dude out in the like that came out of the woods, the green guy, probably came back, and like that's who she had like a showdown with, maybe, because that's obviously a real person. Or so we think, because everybody else in the town is interacting like that really happened. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So maybe that she ended up having to kill that guy. But like I said, you don't know.
Because
I
the
don't think
difference
we'll
is
ever
we
know.
do get the Green Knight character in that sequence of her tripping out, which we hadn't seen up until that point. Or is it no, right? Or is it the same guy because he started putting more stuff on his face?
It's the same guy. He's like turning
like
into
fully
whatever
grown
now.
out or whatever. 'Cause
Yeah.
I know that we get the sequence where he's like underground and he's putting the leaf on his head, so it seems like he's being a soldier of Mother Nature, is what you're saying,
I thought
right?
she like awoke him, like from his slumber, like, you know what I mean? It's like awaking a deep evil, like
And that's what I thought,
natural
because
evil.
of her chant in the tunnel. That's why I thought, because it played the while she was doing like the chants, we kept seeing the water dripping on the.
It's like a summoning.
Yeah, it's almost like her voice was awoken him, like you said.
Hey man, he's a man. He's gonna chase. He's gonna stalk. He saw a woman. You know. She
Yeah,
woke him up
no,
from his
that's
death.
it's as simple as that.
It's
I
as
do
simple
think.
as that. Honestly,
I agree.
But there's all that complexity there because you have these really complex scenes and images that are meant to just disorient you. Like, I think that is one of the main things in this movie, is like leaving you disoriented. And what I was gonna say about the cell phones, as I kind of got off of it, was that the cell phone's also not working and stuff like that. I just think that's meant to confuse you in the way of like, is this some kind of Twilight Zone type town? Did
Yeah.
she go into a different
Because
pocket universe? You know what I mean? Where we don't know what's really going on, and like none of this is real.
Because,
like almost like that M. Night Shyamalan idea of like, hold on, what is really going on here?
I see what you mean.
because the number one thing that did not work for me in this movie was when she received the text from when she was texting her
Oh,
friend,
yeah.
and it was like, I know where you are,
Lord.
you stupid bitch.
This is just a new thing in movies because I watched the new Scream, and it's like that is also used,
and it's
that
like,
effect.
and like I can get it, like that might make sense in a different movie if like somebody had taken her phone, but that just makes no sense and doesn't line up with anything else in
That's
the movie.
true.
I feel like
Good point.
And I also do not like the fact that her phone breaks up and you can see like a guy on the other side. Like what is that?
That's a weird. That is weird because the phone wouldn't do that. But I guess that's where kind of Gus is going into, like, it makes you think, is this a Twilight Zone type place where this guy is running everything in this area? So yeah, he's showing up through the screen because he's connected to Mother Nature, so he could just do that.
It
I
might
guess.
be some sort of red herring or
But
whatever.
I do agree with you.
Electricity is natural.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know.
I will agree that I don't think you take out that text thing, not missed at
Yeah,
all.
I don't-
And
I
do
did not
think
like
if you
that.
don't use the faces, it doesn't take anything away from it too. So I could see
You
that
know,
point.
with the heavy-handedness and the leaning into like, you could argue that Alex Garland makes B movies that are A movie quality.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that is where like just some earnest horror shit pops into the movie.
To Videodrome shit.
Just some like hokey shit that doesn't work, and it's like, why is you're a like, well, at least in what Alex Garland wants us to think, it's like that you're above doing something like this. Is that kind of how you take it, Nate? Where it's like, this feels cheap.
It
in a
does.
movie
It
that
felt
isn't
cheap. Yeah, no, that's how I felt. Yeah,
Yeah, right. And I do think that's what it is. I just think it's like he leaned in a little
like
too
you,
hard in that.
exactly.
moment.
Like you really didn't need that at all.
I
Like,
wouldn't do anything
Because
to the
Gus
movie.
brought it up that he was failing to find inspo to how to do like drawing out like the bloody stuff, and then he saw Attack on Titan and it gave him that inspiration. But he did say that it was how Attack on Titan shows like kind of leans a little bit more towards the ridiculousness, but only enough to scare you. Be like, that's not what the human body actually looks like, but it's only enough to scare
Well, it's
you.
like, yeah, cell phones don't actually do that. But
That's
in
what I
the
was
scary
going
movie
at.
world, you can lean into the idea of like, my cell phone got hacked by a ghost.
And that's where I was going at, is that I think he put some of that into leaning into the ridiculousness was a face coming out of the screen, or for some reason the guy hacked your phone for the one text.
It's like, it's super nitpicky because like in my head, it would even work for me if it was like she sent that text to her friend and another number texted her and
Yes.
was like, I already know where you are. It's like, okay, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
But to come
For
from
it
her
to be from
phone,
the friend's
yeah, it's
phone,
like, bro, she's
yeah.
4 hours away. Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah,
So-
I know. He feels it. I feel like this movie is above that. And for
Agreed.
that to
Yeah.
be in it is kind of cheap.
I agree.
One last thing I really wanted to talk about was the difference I noticed in the trailer versus the actual movie. And I think maybe it was shot out of, well, obviously it was shot out of order. That's how they make movies. But I think something from the trailer got left in from the original ending, which is Rory Kinnear had mentioned that one of the endings of the movie was that it leans really into the idea that this is an entity and it's chasing her and changing forms as it's chasing her. So almost like The Thing, right?
Cool.
Like something like that. But
Hell
that,
yeah.
they were like, I don't know. Maybe
much
that's,
like a
maybe
thing.
that's too much, you
Yeah.
know? So they didn't really do that. And I guess it was more artistic, which is like, okay, Alex Garland, I could understand why he was like, hold on, let me do something better than that, or like more thought provoking.
I think like you said, he wrote Annihilation, was like, wait, no, let me do the ending kind of more like that, actually.
Yeah, because in the trailer, when Jessie Buckley is like in the garden at night and then she closes the door, you hear like heavy, like Hulk level footsteps and like heavy screaming, like, okay, this is a straight up monster chasing her.
Interesting.
And then what we get in the ending is a lot more
Subtle.
trippy mindfuck
Yeah.
situation than straight up.
I'm gonna
the ending
fucking
of the
get,
thing where it becomes the mega thing.
You can
Yeah.
consider that she might be tripping out in this ending, but the ending that you're saying, like, oh no, the entity's fucking real.
No, yeah, this thing takes place. Like this does happen, and then we get the Get Out type shot at the ending where the friend shows up, right? And we get confirmation that this was definitely real.
In some way.
Yeah. So I think we did pretty good for
yeah.
three fellas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we covered it.
I think we're
We're
open.
not like all men, ladies.
I think we're open to knowing that there's some stuff that obviously was right on the nose, and the fact that all three of us, without even really talking about it before, agreed. I think that might just come from how much we watch movies, though.
We have to hurry and end this. I can't keep pretending I'm this smart. I can't keep pretending I knew what I was talking about for the last
Not
hour.
this empathetic. No. Man.
Oh man.
But I had a great time with this.
Yeah.
Alex Garland, you are that guy, pal.
Yeah, no shit, dude.
I know it's hot right now to pretend like everybody hates Alex Garland.
Yeah,
That's what the
apparently.
discourse has become.
That's so
is that
stupid.
he's no good, and he even feels like an imposter somewhat. But
Y'all are
I
tripping.
mean, I don't want to throw this around like slightly, but I feel like Alex Garland is probably like our closest to Stanley Kubrick that we have today.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can see
okay.
that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a little.
Well, it's not Robert Eggers, and it's not Ari
No.
Aster, and it's
No.
not Julia Ducournau, it's
No.
not Jordan Peele. Maybe Yorgos Lanthimos.
Maybe.
I
Yes.
feel like they're kind of twin frequency of the same kind of weirdo making movies, you know?
Yeah, there was some weird
An interesting
shit.
thing I heard Alex Garland say, he's like, when I meet people and even the people who work on my movies, he's like, I try to make sure they don't see anything I've
Oh,
ever
yeah.
made before.
I've seen that.
And it's because I want them to keep this image of me that I'm normal. And
so
he was like,
funny.
because I am normal. And then he did the whole like, well, you know, what's really normal? But
Yeah.
he was like, I don't want them to think that I'm this person. It's just, these are the things I come up with, but that I'm a pretty normal person overall, so that I don't match the movies I
Okay,
make.
buddy.
yeah, that's what you want me to think.
That's exactly what a normal person would
Would
say,
say.
right? Yeah.
But he does seem like a pretty grounded person. He is pretty hard on himself, it seems like. And I mean, I think obviously a lot of the greats have been, and that's what makes you cemented on not putting out bullshit.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say about the Attack on Titans reference is that he said that when you see good shit, it makes you want to step up your level because you're just like, that can be done.
I did
Yeah.
like that.
And if it can already be done and it's cool, like you can build on that cool with more cool.
And just like as a creative, it pushes you to be like, I can't sleep on it because look what somebody is making. And it's like, well, as you're given all this money or whatever, or executive power, Alex Garland is trusted. Be like, you got to show people why you're trusted and can't really lack on that. And I mean, yeah, as a pod, I think he's cemented after this episode, or we know now that he is a big part of all three of us really like him.
Yeah.
So
I mean, don't be surprised when the Annihilation and Ex Machina episodes
Yeah,
drop.
for real.
I feel like that could be sooner rather than later because I don't want to wait until his next movie to talk about him.
which
again.
I will. That's what the next part I want to say. In that same interview, he was talking about within 7 days of finishing Men, he's already working on another movie,
Civil
Attaboy.
War movie.
Attaboy.
and he's gonna take.
Is it really?
Yeah,
And he's just gonna take a
Interesting.
pause after that for a little bit.
I would too. Civil War's boring,
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah,
Damn.
we'll see.
All right.
but I mean, I'm there for it.
yeah, I
hopefully
know.
it's-
I'll see that
hopefully
shit for
it's
sure.
zombies.
Yeah, exactly.
Pride and Prejudice zombies.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Abraham Lincoln Vampire
Vampire.
Slayer. I would love to see Alex Garland do something like
Yeah.
that.
That'd be fucking fun.
Give him Van Helsing.
Overall, though, I'd say we all enjoy this movie. Obviously.
No, yeah, I thought this was I think this was a great movie. If I had to rate it, I'd probably give it like 4.5 out of 5, something like that. I think this is an important movie. Like I said, I don't know how accessible it is for everybody because of, not even just the subject matter, but what really happens.
If you're listening to this pod, you could probably handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you can, but no, like I said, I really like movies where it makes you think about things and kind of makes you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, or in this, put yourself in another gender's shoes. You know what I mean? And I think it was a really cool movie, and I like the way that he executed and told the story he told.
If they're listening to the pod, our first one is Titan. Titan is obviously just as disgusting and everything, and
I think Teton is not even.
no, it's not even close to this,
Yeah.
but it has its disgusting parts. So I will say we have set the precedent for liking stuff like that. But I will say that I hope more people go and watch Men. I hope it does decent at the box office, just so it's not a total loss for A24. But I am glad that they're putting out stuff like this. I think this will have a bigger discourse years down the line. I think it'll be better appreciated years down the line. Yeah, I can't wait for his next project, and it was really fun to talk about this one.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So hit all the buttons. Tell us how much you love Alex Garland, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, go buy your ladies some flowers. treat them right.
No apples. No. What did you say? No scrumpy.
No scrumpies.
Bye.
Bye.